talking about how the INFJ finally lets go and is able to move on once and for all. We've known this forever, that when we get stuck on something, there is no going back. It takes a lot of time, a lot of effort, a lot of things to happen that tell us that this isn't the way to go. It might be a person in our life that we need to let go of, that we don't have a future with, although our subconscious tells us that that's the person for us. It might be that it's a job that you feel like, okay, I've put so much effort into this path and now I'm supposed to switch. I cannot do that. My mind doesn't allow it. And we've heard so often that other people say, okay, you just need to remove yourself from the situation. No contact with that person. Forget that that job ever existed or that dream scenario. Just take up something new. We know that this doesn't work because it's pretty much burned into our subconscious. So we don't even approach it at all. But today I'm going to tell you how we can find the perfect balance. It is different for INFJs to find a place and a path that makes us not only want to move forward, but we see that this is happening. We can see the progress. We see that things are finally starting to happen. We're learning to let go of all that stuff that doesn't have a future in our life. Before we get started, I want to remind you, if you want to take the next step in creating your INFJ epic life and you want my personal help with this, then work with me one-on-one. All the information you find below. As INFJs, we have a very unique way of approaching sticking with something and letting go. Because in a lot of ways, we can forget things that other people might not be able to. We can really move on. We can say, okay, I'm becoming a new person. I'm adapting to this new lifestyle. And that old version of myself was an old version. It seems like it was another lifetime ago. It's not something that I can connect to. At the same time, we also know if we have locked something in, as in, that is my dream. That is the person that's going to make me happy. That is the scenario that I see going down for the next 10 years at least. This is my life. That once we commit to something so much internally that you can't just say, oh, okay, I'm just gonna do no contact or I'm going to forget about that dream. This doesn't work. So if we know both of these things, what does that mean? Well, it means that if we hang on to something, it's like we have this huge amount of weight that we carry with us. It's not positive, it's not negative, it's just heavy. Imagine yourself being a really big stone. That stone can roll, that stone can be in one place and be really stubbornly stuck there. And on the other side, you might have somebody who's more like a feather, who can move around in the wind, who can go all places, and that person cannot really commit to one thing. I'm talking about extremes here, but just imagine those two scenarios. That person that's more like that feather can go in all directions all the time. They're changeable. It's hard for them to get stuck on something. The stone is something that cannot be easily changed. But once it's changed, once it's moved, it's stuck there pretty solidly. So it takes a lot of momentum, it takes a lot of strength to move that stone. Different with the feather, right? And you might say, okay, but we as INFJs, we can adapt to any situation. We can do whatever we want. We understand that social group, then we have another one we connect over here. We're actually more like that feather. Yes, in a way that's true, but that only goes for things that aren't really deeply rooted in us. Things that we can just do on the fly that don't define us. It's like, okay, I can be that person in that social group, but if I lose that social group, it's not gonna be devastating to me. But things like who I'm going to be, things like what person I want to be in my life for the long term, like really a partner that might be my partner in crime, or a vocation, a dream of this is exactly what I want. Things that are that important to us, we get obsessed with. And when we get obsessed with them, we build them. So it might start with a little feather, but it gets heavier and heavier and heavier. And we do that because through thinking about something, through obsessing of something, we get to experience that perfect emotion, this amazing feeling that we think is going to be ours once this thing is in our life. It might be us being a specific version of ourselves. It might be that it's about the other person and how our life will be once that person is in our life, that they're the perfect match for us. And again, it's the same thing about imagining, okay, I have this scenario in my life in a couple of years, this is where I'm going to be. We continuously think about this. And when we do this, we build our personality reality around this. We build our identity around this. This is who we become. That person, that version. And that gets locked in like that stone. And if you want to change that, because for example, you've recognized, okay, I've had a crush on this person for 5 years, but nothing's really happening. That person isn't making any moves no matter what I do. That person lives in another country and doesn't want to move. Or even if he or she says they want to, they never do anything about it. Or that you say, okay, I want to do this one thing with my future, but the circumstance that I'm in right now doesn't allow this to happen. It cannot be exactly that thing that I want it to be. When we get to these situations, we very often talk about reality breaks, but they happen for many of us really at a very big extreme scenario. That's why so many INFJs, me included, get obsessed over people for years. I'm talking about like 5 to 7 years, people that we know, if we rationally think about it, there isn't a future there. Like, really think about it. What is that person going to do with their future? Does it involve you? Is there an action plan? We very often know these things are not that way. You might hope for them, but they haven't happened. What we imagine in that moment is how we're going to feel about ourselves when we're with that person. How we're going to feel about ourselves once we've achieved this external goal. That's how it feels when you're basing your happiness on something that is out of your control. Because you don't control the other person. You don't control that scenario and that future. What you do control, though, is who you become and what you attach those positive emotions to. You can still have that emotion that you dream of so much when you think about that person, that scenario, that job, whatever it might be. We can do that. We can have that. But in order to really go for our dreams, we have to first wake up from them. And we have to understand that if I rationally think about this, like this is the whole TE thing, right? If I actually think about this, I don't have to do this all day long, every day, but once it's necessary and you recognize this isn't going to do it, like nothing has happened here, it's not going to change, we have to change. And to do something which is like this mainstream approach of no contact, forget about this, just remove yourself from this, doesn't work because we're that stone. And if you do this, so if you try no contact, if you try to remove yourself from the situation, if you do something that's supposed to get your mind off of it, you're still going to go back. Your mind just doesn't allow you to do that. And what happens at that moment? And that's the crucial part. We feel like, okay, whatever people tell me to do doesn't work, so why even try? Thinking about this gives me a short-term high. And that's what I'm going for. I'm going for that high because that's the best emotion I can have right now. And there is no other way. Anyways, I cannot forget about this. Here comes the point. We have to know that this is going to happen and that it will take time for us to move that stone because we have created that stone, we have made it as big as it is, and now we need the exact same strength to move it. And when we know this, we also know that whatever we start new isn't going to feel that great, but it isn't going to feel that great in the beginning. It's going to expand and it's going to get bigger and it's going to get better if we continuously choose that other thing, knowing that it's totally okay to go back. That's the thing. That's what's different for INFJs, and that's what makes the huge difference because we don't judge ourselves then. We know, okay, I'm thinking all the time, constantly, from morning till evening about that. I'm not even in my life. I'm not creating something to change my life. If you change this, let's say 100% of your time, we're just giving examples here. This is not like to be realistically taken. And then I start thinking about this only 90% of the time, and 10% I start doing something over here. I start building something that has a future, that makes me feel good, something that is in my control. See, I can't control if that person is going to act the way I need, but what I control is that I put myself out there, that I say, these are the things that are important to me, that you start meeting people, that you get to know them, that you give other people a chance to be the person that you need in your life and not adapt yourself to that person, that scenario, or whatever it is that's over here that's really stiff that you cannot change. You say what you want, you start creating it, and then you allow your environment to catch up. You take the steps to make things happen. And for us as INFJs, it's important to not expect too much of us. I always say go for success stories every day. So if you're able for 1 hour in the day to be in that scenario over here where you start building something new, you're already winning. Maybe the next day it's going to be 1 hour and 10 minutes. And so the list goes on. And every single time you do that, you start creating a new stone, or you start moving that old stone. You start creating something that is constant. And every single time you have to move something that is so heavy, something that has such a big influence on your identity, it's always something that's going to give you immense growth. Because you know how hard it is to move that stone. You know it's going to take time. And because you know this, you're going to change in such a way that is more beneficial to you. Because you've learned not to obsess over those things over here that aren't going to happen for you. There is a lesson in that every single time. Because once you take this burden on of changing, it's long-term work. It's something that doesn't feel great in the beginning, but you're doing that because you want to build something that can be more constant, that you don't have to change anymore, that can stay there forever. With every step you take like this, you recognize one part of yourself that you're committing to for yourself. It doesn't mean that it can't change over time, but it doesn't have to be such a crass change, something that is going to be that difficult. If we want to let go of the things that are not happening over here, we have to be okay with moving slowly, with going back here from time to time, and to be happy about every single time we're able to stay away from this one step more. Remember, this isn't about the other person. It isn't that that person is so amazing. It's just that we have built our identity based on the feeling we get obsessing over these things here. You want to let go? Start building something new. Don't feel like you can just tell yourself to quit cold turkey. Don't tell yourself that you just have to find closure or to find some answers. You already know the answers, which are, it doesn't matter what that person thinks. It doesn't matter why that situation doesn't work out. The only thing that matters is that you recognize this isn't working out for me, and how can I ensure that in the future the things I take on work out better. There are always lessons learned here, and they have to be taken into consideration when we build the next higher version of ourselves. That's how the INFJ lets go once and for all. And once you've been able to create that new atmosphere over here and you start obsessing over that in a positive way, you give this a positive emotion. It's like you felt the only way for me to feel happy in my career is if I work at that company. That's the only way. And you recognize at this company, you're just not being respected. No matter what you do, no matter how much you put into it, just doesn't work. And it will take you a while until you recognize this in your soul. And then switching to something else is going to be hard because your identity is based on this is success. Everything else is failure. When in the end, maybe the thing that's going to make you really happy isn't the fact that you have a job at that particular company, but it's that you do something and you create something that people appreciate you for. And it doesn't matter that it isn't at this big known company because you're not basing your identity on that. Maybe it's something that allows you to live close to the beach, that allows you to be more in tune with nature, and which also allows you to become the next bigger version of yourself. In order to do that, we have to start obsessing over that new thing. How do we do that? We don't focus on the fact that this is at a small company, although we wanted to work at that big, well-known company. No, we focus on the fact that it's at the beach. We focus on the fact that we have time for ourselves. We focus on the fact how kind our coworkers are at this new place. That's how you build this new thing. Same thing with a partner. You know that thing isn't working out. So what was missing here? Think about that. And when you have something new, really start being grateful for those things that you might have not even thought about before, like the beach scenario. It wasn't something that was on your radar. Now it is. Now that new person can be somebody who's in your life to stay, who's committed, who you can have a connection with that's different than anything you had before, which might have been just based on drama, right? On this intensity. And that might have been exciting, but isn't enough to build the future that you want. Focus on the thing that new life is giving you in such a positive way that you start anchoring yourself in here, and it makes you feel better than you could have ever imagined. You build something new and it becomes bigger than the last thing could have ever been. And once you've done this, once you've created this like new stone that's way bigger and it's there to stay and it makes you feel good and you want even more of that and know there's a future, because I know no matter what direction I feel or think about, I can grow here. This isn't like limited. There is no glass ceiling here. You don't even want to go back. You finally let go, because you haven't let go because you just put a band-aid over it, or because you feel like, oh, okay, I just have to pretend that I don't care, but deep down that's what I want. No, you build something that you want more, something that makes you feel even better, something where you can continuously grow and where you are focusing your energy on what you can control, what you can co-create with your environment. That is how the INFJ lets go of that stuff. And if you want to watch another video now that is in alignment with today's topic, and watch the video on how the INFJ finally gets unstuck.